What is up, Facebook land? Welcome to another episode of the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. And before I introduce my very special guest, the famous Mr. Brian Propp, former Philadelphia Flyer legend, I want to first, as always, dedicate this show to someone or somebody special to me. What you may or may not know is Brian Propp suffered a stroke. So in honor of stroke survivorship and people that have had family members who've suffered a stroke, I'm giving a dedication today to two of my clients at Max Out, Michael Ozzy O'Sullivan and Rob Donnelly, who are both stroke survivors and work their ass off every day trying to regain some level of independence and are doing fantastic. And I'm very proud of both of them. The podcast, where can you hear it once this Facebook Live episode ends? You can hear it on iTunes. You can hear it on Stitcher, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcast, Castbox, Radio Public, Breaker, and Pocket Cast. So before Brian and I start talking, I'm going to do a little bit of an intro like I always do. Brian is a native of Saskatchewan, Canada. He was drafted 14th overall by the Flyers in 1979-80 draft. Played for the Flyers for 10 years. He holds many NHL and Flyer records. He's a member of the Flyers Hall of Fame and a 1,000-point scorer in the NHL. He's the originator of the guffaw. We'll talk more about that. He didn't create the word the guffaw or the movement, but he originated it in the NHL, and I'm sure he'll tell that story. He's an ambassador for the Flyers, which means he's going around during games, taking pictures, introducing himself to fans, just being an overall great guy and showing how great the Flyers organization is to their fans. He's the director of strategic relationships for Wolf Commercial Real Estate in New Jersey, and he is a stroke survivor and advocate. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the man, the myth, the legend, Brian Propp. Welcome, brother.
Hey, Matt, how you doing? It's nice to hear you talking today. I'm impressed with your introduction. So
thank you. It's your life, brother. I just read it.
Yeah, but I like I thought that you're dedicating your stroke survivors to this short.
Well, I think it's appropriate, and I think we'll get I really want to get into that as we move on with the show about how you've suffered a stroke and how you're recovering from that. But you're the first guest I've had. You're the fourth guest of the show. I think 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, you're the fourth guest, and you're the first one that I don't necessarily have a relationship with prior. We don't know each other. We've met each other once at an event, but we never really got to know one another. So this is new for me, where I don't have any real connection point with my guest that I can rely upon to make me comfortable. So this is going to be a uncharted territory for you and for me, and but I think it's going to be fun. I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk a little bit about your history with the Philadelphia Flyers and how you were drafted and the career that you had that led you to become a member of the Flyers Hall of Fame. Let's go back to 1979-80 when you were drafted. Let's go from there and move forward. What was that like when you got the call that you were drafted by the Philadelphia Flyers 14th overall?
Well, at that time, press wasn't doing that much at that time. I was in Saskatchewan. I was actually working on a farm when I got the news that I got drafted, and so the Flyers let me know that I got drafted 14th overall, and then they called me, and after that I got a chance to meet them in Philadelphia because I was got from Saskatchewan. So I didn't know much. I was very naive, and so that's why I didn't talk too much at the start. Like the people, when they got to know me, it took me a couple of years to break out and be heard. But before that, the Flyers were always really good to me. And at that year, it just changed to a one-year league. Like it was the NHL only. They had a couple other years where leagues that were in 1980 and 79 and 80. And from there, I was very happy that I got drafted to the Philadelphia Flyers because at that time I was a good player for them, and I liked the way they played the game of hockey. And of course, they had great leaders like Bob Clark. He taught me a lot at the start, and I never will forget that.
Now, when you started, it was a few years after they won their second Stanley Cup. And what was the team like as far as their win-loss? Were they a good team? Were they a struggling team, a rebuilding team? What was it like when you got drafted and you first started with the Flyers?
Well, at that time, the Flyers had won a couple Stanley Cups, and they just they drafted a couple new players like Ben Wilson and Kenny Linsman, and so they were starting to build for a little bit with that, and with me being there too, it really helped. And Pete Peters was another rookie that we did really well. And I'll never forget, like the first game that I played against for the Flyers, it was against the Islanders. And I had a chance to play with Bob Clark and Reggie Leach. And
Wow.
so I scored a goal and got an assist, and it was a game-winning goal for me, and we won 4-2. And then the second game, it was 9-2. We lost. And I was saying, wow, how is this going to be? Because I was so used to winning in Brandon. Because at that my last year in junior, I only lost 5 games in 72 games. And so, but then from that, we started a 35 undefeated streak, and that's still a record to this day.
And that was in 79, 80?
Yes. And so
wow. That's 38 years that's been around. That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's a little different now because they have overtowns and shootouts and things like that. So it's really tough to have a streak like that anymore.
So playing with Bobby Clark, I'm a fan of the Broad Street Bullies. I'm a fan of the Flyers. But what was it like playing with a guy that was such an intense leader, such a dynamic player, such an icon in Philadelphia? It had to be hard to be on the ice or even in the same locker room as a guy who was that well loved and well respected, and being a new guy coming into the league.
Yeah, but I played for the Brandon Wheat Kings. That was in the Western Hockey League, and Bobby Clark played at Flin Flon. And so we had the same idea. We both worked really hard. We practiced hard, and we didn't back out for anybody. And but to Bob Clark, to me, he taught me a lot. Like just when I first started playing the game on his line, like he talk a little bit and tell me where to go and help me out a lot. And that's the type of leader he was. He was very good with leadership. And all the teams that he won for, like they still admire him because he did the little things for a team. And that's the way I used to like to play because I'm a team player. I didn't have, I gave up some points just to win games. And that's why I love playing for the Philadelphia Flyers. But the Philadelphia Flyers were so good to me for 11 years. And I'm still living in this area and doing some work with the Flyers as their ambassador. And I know a lot of the alumni that are there. They have events that they go to. We do a lot for the communities, and I'm on the board of the Flyers alumni too.
Well, it's cool to me that there's not a lot of teams anymore, at least in this generation. I know growing up, I'm going to be 48 years old, so I grew up in the 70s and the 80s where players stayed and they made their career in with one team in one city. The Mike Schmidts, the Steve Carltons, the Brian Propps, the Bobby Clarks. Those guys stayed and made careers and became legends. And you look at guys like Ron Jaworski, who he is a legend. He can walk into any restaurant anywhere in the tri-state area, and he's probably not paying for a meal if he doesn't want to. And I think that's something that's missing today in today's sports, is that commitment to the team, commitment to a city. And I think even reciprocating, there aren't many teams left that are reciprocating with their players and trying to get that from them. And I think the Flyers are still one of those old school organizations that believes that if they have loyalty from their players, they'll give loyalty back. Don't you think?
Oh, definitely. And because there's a lot of the alumni that live and work in the area, and they've been here ever since they started playing. And it's sort of like Jaworski. Like, he played in the 80s when I was there, I go to his golf tournaments every year. I help him, and like your guest Vince Lambert, Papala. I know him from doing the show, and Lou Tilley that you talked to him. Like I did a hockey show with Lou Tilley called Proper Hockey for 4 years.
He did tell me that. We talked about that in this show a little bit.
Yeah, so it was all a lot of fun. But in the 80s, just by being there for as long as I was and living and working here, I love it. I know a lot of people because I did the radio for 9 years for the Flyers, and so after hockey, I did the radio, and then with that, I did every home game, every game throughout my career there. And so I got to know other alumni from the Devils, Rangers, Islanders, and Pittsburgh. And so after time, you get to know all the right people. But Philadelphia is special. It's like Pittsburgh. They're a small city, and the players that are there, they love it too. But it's a little different than New York. Like in New York, you can get lost here and there. Mm-hmm. But Philadelphia it's been so nice. It's close to home. And a lot of these guys live and work here, and we do a lot of work for the charities and for the city and the town. And because like even having Bernie Pratt and Dave Schultz, with me, I mean, it really makes a difference because we're older and we tell better stories.
Well, I've been in a room. I've been with both those guys personally in different events and had private conversations with both of them, and they're both amazing storytellers. So that is very true. Dave can tell a story about fighting in a way that makes it seem like he wasn't beating somebody up. Like it was, it was captivating when you listen to him tell a story. And the funniest line he ever told me was, "I've never been in a fight without hockey skates on."
Oh yeah,
that to me, but he's probably been in 300, 400 fights in his career, but he's never not once had one without hockey skates on.
Oh yeah, well that he was smart then. Just like me when I played for the Flyers, like I was always a scorer, but I was smart because I bought the tough guys beer, and so they protected me that way.
So who were the tough guys throughout your tenure? I know that you had the Bobby Clark era guys. Who was the tough guy? Because I don't think Dave was still playing much. If maybe a year.
Well,
or two
he got traded in '79 to Pittsburgh, and then I was there at that point. But Ben Wilson was really tough. Glenn Cochran was tough. Dave Brown was tough. Rick Dockett was. It was good to have those guys on my team because I had to protect them a little. Protected a little bit, but it's sort of like Bob Clark. Like nobody could mess with him because Schultz and Kelly were there, but everyone stuck up for each other. That's why we won, because we played for each other. I think it was like the Eagles last year. They played for their team and their teammates, and so it really does make a difference of how you care for the right people and how you can win.
I think that's a great message because you look at this year's Eagles and you're wondering what's the difference, right? You're wondering why is the magic not there? And that just proves why it's so hard to repeat as a champion. And what the Flyers did when they repeated in the Stanley Cups is unheard of. And there hasn't been very many repeat champions in the Stanley Cups. I know the Penguins did it a couple times, and maybe the Edmonton Oilers and the dynasties. But for the most part, people don't repeat as champions. And I think the essence of teammate is something that I find the most attractive about the 70s and 80s era of the Flyers is that they're playing for one another. It just seemed like they all wanted to hang out. And I know when I was doing security for some of the guys on the Flyers back in the 90s, I went to a christening for one of the players' kids, and they all kind of lived within 5 miles of each other. And they all like hung out in the basement and drank beer and watched sports. And it was just like I was hanging out with my friends, but these were NHL hockey players. And I think that's one of the reasons why hockey is so dear to me, is because I think it's the everyman sport. It's the ham and egger sport. And it's something that the fame and fortune doesn't seem, for the most part, to affect the hockey player as much as it does maybe some other athletes.
Yeah, I think that the hockey guys are all nice players. but the league has changed a little bit the last 10 years. There's more Europeans in the league, and people can only stick around for a certain amount of years, and you have to always change the different lines, and for the Flyers, they've always have a good group of people. They have good talented players, and it just seems like they've had a little problem with the goaltenders being hurt so much the last couple of years. Otherwise, they got in the playoffs last year, and they're still fighting for a position place, playoff position right now. They're about 500, but they've been inconsistent, and so hopefully they get on a roll, and then they can get into the playoffs, because this year, every time it gets into a playoff, you have a chance to win now, because we've seen that with Vegas last year. First year, and they almost won the Stanley Cup. So it's tough to get in the playoffs because there's so many teams that you have to get through. But once you get there, everybody has a chance to win the Stanley Cup.
So let's go back to the year when you guys went to the Stanley Cup Finals. Hextall's rookie year, right? What was that year like? What was the magic of that year? Can you take us back to that year and what made that team so special and why you were able to get to the Stanley Cup Finals?
Yeah, at that time we had good teams, good leadership. Dave Poulin, Tim Kerr, Mark Howe, Brad McCrimmon. These are all great players, and it really made a difference with the leadership. But at that time, Ron Hextall just as a rookie, but he kind of changed the game, the way he could handle the puck. I mean, now you see it because he shot the puck out, and they didn't have time to forecheck. And so, from that point on, he knew how to handle the puck, and that changed the game for a lot of these goalies that are still out there. But at that time, he played so well. But like I just said, you get into playoffs, and it's one series at a time. We always had a tough time against the other division, and we had a fight for everything. And at that time, Edmonton was pretty powerful, so they kind of breezed through. But we still got we fought for everything, and then we fought it to Game 7, which I think a lot of people in Philadelphia still admire our work, because if we lost in 5 or 6, but we took them to Game 7, and a lot of people still remember that we really fought really hard. I know we didn't win, but people admire us for the way we worked.
Well, I mean, Edmonton was a dynasty at that time. I mean, they were just a powerhouse, and it was tough to, it's kind of like the Golden State Warriors in basketball. Everybody's like, whoever comes out of the East has to face the Warriors.
Right.
Who cares? They got to face the Warriors. So the fact you took them to a Game 7 is, I think, what, as a Philadelphian, as somebody who eats, sleeps, breathes the 4 major sports, that's what the Philadelphia fan looks for in our athletes, is that hunger, that want, that fight, that dog, that I'm not going to lay down and just get run over, even though the talent may be superior against me. I'm going to fight. And I'm going to make sure they know that they played our team. And that's what we love about the Philadelphia sports teams and the athletes that play for them, especially when you have a team that exemplifies that, like the Eagles did last year with the underdog mentality. And, that was their calling, that they were going to be the underdog and they were going to rise above and prove everybody wrong. And I think your team that year, with Hextall being in goal and all those legends that were on your team, I think it just was, they were all sort of in the same vein, cut from the same vein. And I think that's what made that year real special.
Oh yeah. And, from that, we learned from that, and we just kept trying to improve every year. But again, here in Philadelphia, people in Philadelphia know that they love their sports in 3 different states, and that we play for the Flyers, and we never give up. And but it starts from the team built with character. The more character players you have, the better it is, and you have to you pick the right team and have players that can play for each other, and it really makes a difference. Like I know in the 80s, Pelle Lindbergh died in 85, and so we were forced, his death was unexpected, but we had to deal with it. And that's why I think that we became really close in the 80s because of all the players that we had. And just by helping win, we were closer at that time too. So it really helped with the thought process of how your brain works and how you can deal with death.
Yeah. And I think that's very true because, I mean, you're not immune to it as an athlete. You're not a superhero. You're not devoid of emotion and feelings. And when one of your teammates tragically dies in a car accident, I mean, that has to have an impact. And I'm sure, for everything I've heard about the locker room, the room in hockey and how important it is to have that cohesiveness in the locker room, I'm sure that everybody was pretty close. And the fact that you lost your goalie, a very talented goalie and a good friend, I'm sure that had the potential to derail everybody. Everybody could have taken that and gone the opposite direction. But I think you use your team as a bonding adhesive to keep everybody together during that tough time.
Yeah, and that's where we learned from that too. I mean, it was really tough to lose Pelle because at that time he was one of the best goalies in the league, and so people still in Philadelphia thought that if Pelle was still alive, we could have won a couple of Stanley Cups. But having Mark Howe as the anchor, he was key. He was kill. He was Kier. No. Well, you know what I'm trying to say.
I know you're trying to say.
Yeah, because he was such a good player and a Hall of Famer, but he led by example, and just like his dad, Gordy. I mean, he grew up in Saskatchewan, and he knew how to handle the fans and the press, and Mark was just like that too, and he still is to this day because I see him. He's a scout for Detroit, and I see him every once in a while. And he's awesome guy, and you don't forget guys like that.
And that's, I think, cool too. I was in the military, so I wasn't necessarily an athlete, let alone an elite one. But I was very good in the military, and I was very good in my 25 years as a cop, SWAT, and all that. So we had teams in certain levels similar to sports, and I think that brotherhood, when you really have a special bond with your teammates, and especially when you have success or you go through something traumatic like Pelle's death, I think that builds that lifelong brotherhood that is a little bit different than just saying a teammate. And, there's special teams, there's special groups of men that get together and do special things. And I think that lasts a lifetime. And I think that's one of the cool things about sports is that you can have that brotherhood as an alumni. You get to see all your old buddies and play in the alumni hockey game and still be a part of the organization. And that's all part of that brotherhood that the Flyers really promote.
Oh yeah, and the Philadelphia Flyers have such a strong alumni. Like now, Brad Marsh is our president of our alumni. Bob Kelly does a lot of work for the team. Joe Watson does some work. He still works for the Flyers, and we have Bernie and Dave Schultz and a couple scouts and a bunch of other people. So that's why we stay in front of these people all the time. We get together. We have a golf tournament in the summer, and we have about 50 alumni going to the event. We use two golf courses at DuPont, and it really comes in handy because we like to talk and visit with all these guys, but they give back too. It's just by them being there, it really does make a difference for the charities that we have supporting too.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing. The Flyers Wives Fight for Lives Carnival is something that if you're a Flyers fan, you've been to once in your life, and it's a magnificent event, and it's fun to see all the players out in an environment that's not necessarily their normal environment, and they're interacting with fans, they're signing autographs, they're getting in the dunk tanks, like that kind of stuff. It's just a really cool environment. It's raised a crap ton of money for charity, and I think that's just one of the unique things that I don't know if there's any other team in sports, let alone in hockey, that does something that big for that long. And I think that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, especially the carnival. I mean, it raises over $1 million every year, and it's always nice to have the young guys participate too, because these guys like to see them and talk with them, and it gives them a chance with the carnival that we just had to make sure that they got a chance to see other people and hear them and get to know them a little bit more.
So now that you're still part of the organization, I'm sure you've been in the locker room in the current team setting and the players that are in the locker room today. Is there a difference in the locker room of today versus what it was like when you walked into the locker room? Not physically, but the intensity level, the camaraderie, anything like that. Is there a difference between, say, the 80s and early 90s and the hockey locker room today?
There's a little bit of a difference, because at that time, when we used to play for 8 or 10 years together, we got to know each other, and as I said, now like it's a business, and so people move every couple of years, and so it makes it a little tougher to get closer. Plus, there's more Europeans playing in the league, and so it might be a little different. Like for the Stanley Cup, like there was all Canadian team. That was the last time that happened. But in the 80s and 90s, like most of us were Canadians and Americans, and from the 1990 on, that's when Russia was able to draft their new players, because before that they had to defect, and so. Right. From that point on, like the salaries got a little bit more, and but it's been good for hockey, because these kids they're making a little money now, but it doesn't last that long, and they have to be good with their money and protect what they have, because so many people lose too much money and then they don't know what's going on from that. So the advice that we have, the PR people that the Flyers have, it really helps with teaching them how to act and how to be better with the press. And so, like, we've got a couple of players today that are really good with the press. And so, that's what you need. I know they've been struggling this season, but they're still positive about everything that they have to do.
We're going to transition a little bit. So, we talked about hockey for about 30 minutes, and I think that's the meat and potatoes of what a lot of people wanted to hear. They wanted to hear Brian Propp, Flyers legend, talk. But I think there's so much more to you as a man, as a person, that has happened since you retired from hockey. Let's talk a little bit about what it was like when you got out of hockey and you found yourself trying to find a career and what you were going to do. How did you transition out of hockey into broadcasting? Was that seamless, or was it something that took a little bit of time, or how did that work out?
Well, after I retired, like I played 15 years in NHL, and then I spent a year in France. So, like, it was a nice way to end my career by playing in France. So, like, we didn't play that much, but I had a car and an apartment, and I could travel to France. Every like I had a day off to travel other places, and so. But that way, it was a nice way to go. But the hockey was better than I expected, but it was good to end like that. And then after that, I helped build the Medford ice rink for 3 years, and I ran the whole rink for 3 years. And then the Flyers came to me and offered me a job as the Flyers announcer on radio. And so I did that from 1999 to 2008. And so that was 9 years where I did the radio for 9 years. But at that start, I was terrible. Like I didn't have any training, So, but it took me a couple of years to kind of figure out what's going on. But after time and working hard, and I had Gene Hart, and he helped me a lot.
His soul.
And Bill Clement helped me. It really made a difference. Just by getting advice from these veteran broadcasters, and of course Tim Saunders was so good for me, and he still is today. I still laugh every time I talk with him, and we joke around every once in a while about things that we did, and but it's all about fun. And 9 years playing with the Flyers. It was great because I got to meet all of these other alumni that were working the same way. So every team that I got to see, and from being from Canada and doing a lot of events, hockey events in Canada and golf events in Canada and golfing in New Jersey and Philadelphia. Like I know a lot of the golf courses and the people who are there. So it just starts adding up to know more people. And then after 9 years, I moved onto the judge group in Conshohocken for 5 years.
Marty.
Marty. Marty.
Yeah.
Who doesn't? Yeah, but I still talk with him, and I actually just met with a couple of their guys in Philadelphia. They just moved their new space into 18 Market Street, and but I'm close with all of them, and so. It was good for me. I loved it for 5 years, and then after that, after 4 years now, I'm with Wolf Commercial Real Estate and doing the ambassadorship, and I do some consulting here and there with other companies too. But it's all been really good for me, and I like to stay very busy. I know Jenny Ryan has a few of her events at Aldo, and Ken Dunnock has his magazine in Philadelphia and New Jersey, and now they just opened another place in Boston. So all these guys that I know, like we're kind of the same age, but we help each other by participating and helping with charities and helping other people that want to sign up with us. And so it's been really great for me. I really I love what I do. I'm very positive about everything. I'm very happy, and it's been wonderful for me, especially being with the Flyers and having a chance to help with them.
So you've had a really good run from the time you started playing hockey as a little kid up until 2015. And in 2015, you suffered a stroke. Let's talk about that a little bit.
I had an ablation, which is you get that in the heart. Like that was about 10 years ago, and so an ablation in the heart, it was supposed to help me to feel a little better. And after 6 months after the ablation, I was doing really well. And then I think after time, the medication wore off. So I didn't realize that I was in AFib, and so it started up again, and but I didn't notice it, and so without having blood thinners and AFib, I think that what happened is that I went on a vacation with my family and was in AFib and wasn't feeling that well, like the trip. Like the first day I was okay. The second day I had a really bad headache, and so I stayed back from the rented house, and I just went to bed. And about 1:30 in the morning, I fell out of bed. I hit the side of the bed. I lost a couple of teeth, and I couldn't talk. I couldn't do anything. Thankfully, my children were there and called 911 right away. So I was in Annapolis for 5 days, and I didn't really know what was going on. And then from there, I transferred to McGee Rehab Hospital, and then I spent 2 months there every day, and then I went to 5 days a week at outpatient for McGee. It was a struggle, at the start. I couldn't talk for 3 months. The only things I could say was and Bernie Pront. It just came.
Not to laugh, but the fact that Bernie Pront is one of the things that you could say after a stroke is hilarious.
Not my children's names, nobody. And he still laughs about that because I work with him now. But so it was really scary at the start, and it took me about a year and a half before I got better. I had, as you know, I had occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy. And it took me a long time for speech therapy just to relearn the words and how I could talk. And my physical therapy went a little faster because I was in good shape. My occupational therapy, I stopped doing that the last year, but my right fingers and side that still doesn't work that well, so I have trouble tying a tie, shoe lock, can't button a shirt. So it just takes me a little timer, so like I just have to be patient with it. It takes me a little time to get dressed, but other than that, I'm very fortunate that it didn't affect my feet and the right side of my body, because I don't know what I would do if I can't skate, because I still skate twice a week, Wednesday and Friday mornings at Pensacola Skate Zone with a group of guys. We call it a morning hockey league, and so we always have a couple of guys there, 2 goalies, 5-on-5, a couple of subs, and so it's been so good for me physically and mentally, just to talk with the guys. Like we rub, we talk with them. We get having a fun time. It's more about how we are, not how fast we are. How we can rub into each other, like how
like old guys do when they're playing hockey.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, just like me having speech problems. Like these guys, they still have problem if I don't have aphasia. So like it's all been really good.
And what I think, and I know you probably don't want to touch on this, but I will, because to me it's very courageous of you to come on a podcast that is video streamed live on Facebook to roughly 3,000 people who will see this, knowing that you have aphasia. And for people that don't know what that is, it's when your brain can't seem to get the words out right, or they come out backwards a little bit, or they don't pronounce right. And that's something that happens. That's a side effect of strokes at times. Not everybody gets it, but some people do. And for me, I'm honored that you're on this show, because I think the fact that you're battling through still, and people don't understand that even though you may, when you walk into a room, you may look like you're okay again, there still is lingering and will always be some lingering side effects of that stroke. And when I work with people,
I can always use that as an excuse too for the brain. Like there's always lots of excuses I can have. Like if I forget something, or if I get mixed up here and there.
I'm a stroke survivor.
Oh yeah, definitely. I can blame my golf on that, because I lose a shot, and if my brain doesn't work, I might forget about the stroke that I was hearing.
Right. Oh, I got a 3 on that hole.
Right. But there's been a lot of other things that I've done that have really helped me, and for all these people that are listening and stroke survivors. Like I talk with a lot of them every once in a while. I get their information, and there's a couple of things that I've done that have really helped me. I did oxygen oasis in Langhorne, PA. It helps the brain with like for the, it's about
the blood flow and stuff.
Yeah, it's like
right?
it's the oxygen in the treatment is for 90 minutes, and so like it kind of uses the pressure like in a submarine, and so that way you can figure out how to get a little better, more oxygen, and it's clear. Made a difference. I did 40 of those treatments, and they helped me. And then I did a thing for the StelSem treatment. It was a program that the NHL had, and so I went to Colorado just to, if I got there and they did the treatment for the StelSem trains part. That was in a year ago. So I noticed immediately how much better I was with speaking, and so like just by doing things like that, And thing that I've been doing, it's a machine called the Beamer machine. It helps with blood flow and circulation of your whole body. So that's been wonderful for me. I don't get sick anymore. I have tons of energy, and I help people that if they want to buy it. I'm a distributor through my son. But it makes sense for people that are looking for different ways that they can help their whole bodies, and so just those three things really has made a difference for me in my life day to day.
Now let's talk about McGee. I'm a fan of McGee Rehab. We're lucky here in the Philadelphia area that we have some amazing acute rehab facilities. We have Bryn Mawr, we have McGee, we have Moss. And not every city has access to that much specialty when it comes to neurological, neuromuscular injuries. Let's talk about McGee and how important they've been in your recovery.
Yeah, well, it was at the start, like where I was there for two months every day, so I got to know the people there, and physical therapy, the occupational and speech therapy people were wonderful, and I'll never forget them. And just from that, I did a couple of donations from a couple of people, so that we could help other people that didn't have insurance. And so, a couple of those people have really been helpful to get the treatment from McGee. But McGee has been doing wonderful for me. I love the hospital. I love the people that are there. They just fixed up their top 6 floors, and so they have more rooms there, and but I'll never forget them, what they did for me, and it's just it's amazing with how good they have been for me.
I want to talk a little bit about, because I work with people that had strokes and TBIs and MS, ALS, and all different kinds of issues, neurological and neuromuscular, and one of the things I work with them on and I talk to them about is the emotional side, the feeling of what's going to happen, that unknown, because this is uncharted territory for most of them. Not like you every 5 years get a stroke and you figure out how to deal with your strokes. It's when you have a stroke, it's like, oh my God, what do I do? What was it like when you first realized you had a stroke? What was going through your mind? Because you're a trained athlete, you are elite, you're a Hall of Famer, you're a 1,000-point scorer, you're Brian Propp, and here you are unable to say anything other than Bernie Perrant, and you can't move and you can't speak. What was your first thoughts that were going through your head at the time?
Well, I think that I'm always very positive. It was a struggle at the start because I wanted to make things happen a lot quicker, and your brain could work, but it didn't always come out, and so it was a little frustrating for me because you just want things to happen a little quicker, and you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing. Thankfully for me, my 2 feet worked, and so I was active. And that way, McGee, they trained me they saw me do roller skate. And so they have a machine at McGee that uses the roller blade or the braces that they hold it up top.
Hoist you up, right?
Yeah. So it was for me, it was so nice because I was practicing something that I love to do, playing. And I had to be careful, but it made a difference of the thought process, because a lot of these people that have strokes, their right side or feet, or they don't work, and your speech is impaired, and so that for me to have a chance to talk with people that are struggling, they have to be patient. And they have to take their time, and they have to be positive all the time. And it's tough because you're feeling, what do you know? I'm lying in bed with my right side, and thing doesn't work, and you're telling me to take it easy and to relax and to be positive. And a lot of people struggle with that. It's that's why I can see that a lot of people have disabilities that it affect them, because especially when they have to stop working and they're used to working, and it just it's tough because they have nothing to do that whole day, or it just gets lonely, and it's really I'm very fortunate that I'm not as disabled as I could be. But for most of these people here, I want to tell people that, hey, listen, you never know what can happen to you. I know that there's a lot of friends that I know that have died, like in the last couple of years, like Rick McLeish and Dave Booley, Bob Daly, and Ilka Sinanelli, and Zezel, and Brad McCrimmon. He died in a plane crash, and so like you never know where you're going to die, and so like you just have to. I tell people you just have to live your life as best as you can, and make sure that you're positive and you're helping other people, and with that, I know that I help a lot of people that have charities, and so I've been doing some charity events for golf and hockey and other things like that. So and it all adds up where you make some money for other people, and you realize that the money is going to help all these people that I'm talking about.
It's funny that you were just talking about you don't know how long your life's going to be and live your life. And that's why I came up with the name 2 Dates and a Dash. You're born and you die. Those are those 2 dates. They're the only guarantees. Everything else in between is up to you. And I think that what you just said is really profound, because you're coming off of a stroke, and you're able to talk to people who are also struggling, and you're still alive though. You just named 8 people that you played with that are no longer here for whatever reason. And yet you're still here, and you're able to have these conversations with people and explain to them how lucky they are, even though they're in the midst of a struggle, that there is always something worse. And that if you can find that silver lining, and when I'm working with a lot of my clients, and Rob and Ozzy, who I dedicated the show to, I know they struggle with being alone, like you mentioned. They can't work, neither one of them. And so they're home alone while their spouses are out being the moneymakers. They're the providers for the family. And I think, as a man, you want to go out and provide for your family. Number one, you want to be a productive part of the team. But then the fact that you can't creates that feeling of depression, that feeling of loneliness. And I try to explain to them that every day that they come and they work out and they do their training is another day towards a better result. And Rob, one of the things he first told me when he was seeing our results from what we do is he was never able to utilize his bad leg to kick the covers off. He always had to wait for his wife to get out of bed to take the covers off him, because he couldn't get the covers off by using his legs. And one day he was able to lift his leg and move the covers and kick them off himself and get out of bed without waking her up. And to him, that was such a monumental moment, because it was an independent action that didn't require anybody to help him. And then secondly, he didn't have to bother his wife again to get the covers off so he could get out and go to the bathroom, whatever. So for me, those are the moments that I find the most rewarding. And I'm sure when you're talking to people, you have similar type of situations.
Yeah, so like a guy that I skate with at Morning Hockey League, his name's Nick Avgesti. He just had a stroke 2 weeks ago, and so same thing. He's at University of Penn, but he had a bleed, and so like he wasn't sure what was going on. But at least his family are there, and they're helping him. But it's tough because you have to make a living, and you're not sure what's going to happen. But he's home now. And we have a couple of guys that we skate with that hang out. He lives near Ranbury golf course, and so he's close to where we are, and he checks in with his friends, and you have to be positive, and it just takes some time. He's a little problem with his speech right now, but he's getting better quickly. So, that's just an example of guys that I skate with. Like he's 55, and it happened just like that. So, as I tell people, like they have to remember the like FAST. F for face. Does your feet? Your face drooping. A for arms is your arms, or they're not working right. S for speech is your speech impaired. And T for time. Time is critical. Call 911 quickly. And a lot of people don't realize this, and they wait too long, because, like you said, with one of your people, like he was out for like 4 hours or 5 hours, and that time makes all the difference in the world.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the show with you is to have it put a little bit more context on strokes and aneurysms and TBIs and things like that people may not relate to the average Joe, but when they see somebody like Brian Propp, and the reason why you can get people to donate money and I can't is because you've had this career, this place in our community where you're up here on the importance level, and it's because of who you were as a hockey player, and it allows you to have a bigger platform to speak on. And the fact that unfortunately you suffered a stroke, you can speak on another level that people can then resonate with. And I think being able to share your story, your stories of hockey, your stories of how you had a post-hockey career and then the stroke and your recovery and what it was like to go through it yourself can help other people be a little bit more cognizant of the people in their lives that may one day have to go through this on their own. And I really do appreciate that, because it's very easy to have a hockey show where I just talk hockey for an hour. I think that's low-hanging fruit, but it's a little bit more difficult to have a hockey show and mix in some humanity into it. And I think we did that this hour. Now let's talk about some things you have on the horizon, things that you're doing as far as charity events that you have coming up. Anything that you want to plug would be this would be the time that we do that.
Okay, so I've been working with Wolf Commercial Real Estate for the last 4 years, and we've done 3 charity golf tournaments, hockey tournaments in September. This last year, we raised $65,000 for the 6 different charities that we had, and another 60 at the second year, and 45 for the other team at the time. And we have a golf tournament that we do in July, and we raised about $30,000 for the golf for the 6 charities that we support at Wolf Commercial Real Estate. And I've been doing some celebrity hockey games. I have another event for the Flyers alumni February 10th, and another tournament hockey event, charity for MS Research Institute at Voorhees Skate Zone.
And when is that one, Brian?
It's going to be March 10th, 1:30 in the afternoon, and then dinner after at Victory Bar in Berlin. And then the Flyers alumni is in Northeast Skate Zone, and that's for my charity is Miracle. It's like it's a big company that has about 10,000 employers, and they use IDD, autism, and drug and alcohol. So we raise about $100,000 every year for that. And just with the golf and the hockey and the other things are going on, and plus Jenny's events and Ken Dunnick's events. We find ways that we can support all of these people that have the need. But it's so nice for me, just to be telling people that they have to be positive and always be, looking for something that's better. Don't get disheartened, and you just have to be patient. Like I know I wasn't that patient when I got started, and I like to do things ahead and fast, maybe too fast, but I like to stay very active, and just by these charities in this area helping, it really does make a difference of where the money goes to.
And you have a website, right?
BrianPropp.com.
That's BrianPropp.com.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, Brian, I want to say thank you. I know that random Facebook messages asking you to be on podcasts may not be the norm, but I'm very glad you said yes. Thankfully, we have mutual connections, and we have had some back and forth prior to me asking you for a favor to come on my show. But it means a lot to me. I'm trying to build up this show to be something special, and having guys like you on the show is really creating that for me. So thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning into another episode of the 2 Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. My special guest, Brian Propp. I thank you. The show will be up in about an hour on iTunes and everywhere else. So thank you again for watching. God bless, and for God's sake, be kind to one another. Have a great night.
Thanks, Matt.